Okay, today I will be installing the ECS Tuning subframe lockdown kit. So this includes upper and lower bushings and the 2 bolts that go into the rear position of the subframe, along with new power steering bolt or steering rack bolts, and new rear control arm bolts, and new upper subframe bolts. So what this kit does is it takes up the slack that's in the normal subframe on these cars, and it prevents it from shifting under hard cornering and hard driving situations. So this car is lowered on coilovers, has 245 tires that are extra sticky and all of that stuff, and while it's going around an autocross event, you can actually hear and feel the subframe clunking as the car transitions. So basically that's the subframe moving underneath the car. So we want to get rid of that, so we're going to install this kit. It retails for about $100. I think it's $101 right now. It includes all the bolts that you see. So hopefully that'll be everything we need to get this installed. So let's get started. Okay, so the first step is putting this on the jack stands, which is a little bit of a challenge with a lowered car like this. So what you need to do, or what I ended up doing, was I lifted the car up, put blocks underneath the tires, so I can get a little extra height to be able to reach under the car and get the jack onto the rear control arm location. So then you should be able to jack it up and swing the jack out of the way and put a jack stand underneath it. Okay, so then on the other side you can reach all the way under if you have a long enough jack and jack it up again by that rear suspension point. Okay, hopping right into it, there are 2 bolts that attach the subframe to the exhaust hanger to the subframe, and you're just going to take those out so you don't pull down the exhaust while you're installing this. Okay, next you're going to loosen the steering rack bolts, which is that one there and that one there. You want to do this before you move the subframe because you don't want to pull the steering out of the slip joint that it's in. And it might be beneficial to have some big wrenches around because there's a fair amount of torque on these. Okay, then an impact driver like this can be a very helpful tool for taking stuff the rest of the way out. Okay, so with those out of the way, the next bolts you need to loosen up are that back corner right there. These are the funky looking ones. I'll show you in a second. Another funky one, back corner, and then you can't really see it. I'll get a better view of it. Oh, maybe you can see it from that angle. Right up here, there's a bolt that goes in the end. You can get to it through this hole in the control arm. But that'll be what you loosen up next. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this, but you just take and you can put up an extension. This is an 18 millimeter. They're all 18 millimeters for these big bolts, and that's how you get those top ones down. So I'm going to finish getting all these loose because I can't do it with one-handed, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, I'm going to try to show you guys how to put in the first one. So basically we have all of the subframe bolts out except for the rear subframe bolt, the funky looking one, and basically you should be able to pull that away. So what you're going to do, you're going to take the upper bushing, which has a tapered side and a little nubbed side, and you should be able to slip this in between. Well, maybe not. You might have to go a little bit lower. Okay, so let's try this again. I got the rear bolt pretty much all the way pulled down. You can see, you slip it in, and it'll drop in that hole. Alright, and then you will put the other side on your bolt before you slide it in that hole. Alright guys, so I have the bolt, the lower spacer, and the upper spacer is on the top. Now, with the bolts out, the subframe moves around quite a bit. So you might require a little manhandling to get that back in place. But then we're just going to do the same thing with the other side. Now you don't want to tighten this up yet. You kind of want to get all the bolts in, and then you can start tightening, because otherwise you might have to loosen it back up to get everything where it needs to go. Okay, now with the front upper subframes held together, you can take the rear bolts out. Now this is what I was talking about by the funky looking bolts. So basically they get thin, they get big, they get thin again. You're going to replace this with the ones that ECS sends. They are from an Audi, and they just don't have this weird taper alignment thing like these do. It should hold a little bit more tension on it, and that is in this position right here. Sorry, getting a little growing pains with the gimbal, but in that position right there. Okay, now these should be the easiest for you to see what's going on with. Alright, so we got our busher with the little nipple thing on the top. You are just going to see if I can't pull attention on that. Yeah. Ah! Alright guys, I'm trying to get this. Just pull that down, slips that in. Then you take your new Audi bolts and go right in there. And then hopefully you should be able to move in position and get it started. Alright. And then to check to make sure everything's seated well, is you're just going to push up on the subframe, and you'll see it'll move on the taper of the collar. If it's catching, then you're going to want to reposition it before you move on any further. Okay, now last, but actually by a strange turn of events, least important, is the sorry, see if we can't get this position a little better. Okay, last but actually least is the control arm, or your control arm bushing position. Now why I say this is least is because on a car with no camber adjustment, you can actually leave these out and pull that way when you install them to kind of use the tolerance in this bushing, or in this hole, to create camber and caster. So if you want to leave that out, that is an option. If you have another form of camber, camber modification, it would probably be your best interest to lock that down as well, so that you have less chance of losing your alignment during aggressive driving. So we'll get that installed, and then we're going to tighten everything up, and I'll show you guys about the torque sequence. Alright guys, my apologies, my big work light went dead, so we're just going to be finishing off the video with a little snaky thing. So basically the only thing that's left at this point is you want to tighten up all of your subframe bolts, the ones that get the spacers, just slowly, evenly, and in a general X pattern. You shouldn't really have any binding up. If so, you need to kind of shimmy the subframe around so everything sets in there. You shouldn't have to force anything at all. So once that's done, you can install your steering rack bolts in, and those should go in pretty smoothly by hand. If that says anything about the quality of the or what the subframe spacer thing actually does, is all of those went in by hand, so everything was aligned properly with the steering rack. So I know previously when I had this apart, you had to took a little bit to get all that stuff to line up, but it lined up perfectly this time. So that really is a testament to what you're doing here. So the steering racks bolts get torqued to 31 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around and we're going to torque everything to 31 foot-pounds to start with. So that'll make sure everything's lined up before we do any actual torque pulls. But then I believe it goes up to, scroll out from under here. My garage is a mess. Then everything else will go, oh sorry, steering rack is 36 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees, and everything else is 51 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So basically when you do the 36 foot-pounds for the steering rack bolts, go ahead and torque everything down in an X pattern. Then we're going to come back with just the subframe bolt at 51 foot-pounds. Then when we're done, we're going to switch to a breaker bar and put 90 degrees on everything. So that's pretty simple. Please note that the car might need an alignment afterwards. It would at least be a good idea to get it on a rack and have it checked out. Make sure it didn't move by very far, you know, 0.1, 0.2, or 0.01, 0.01, 0.02 degrees isn't really going to hurt anything. Much more than that, you can see some wear in your tires. So basically all the suspension geometry is based on the subframe. So as long as the subframe's in the right spot, or you know, the subframe will go to a different spot, then your geometry might change. So I just wanted to point that out because it could be important to certain people. But anyways, it's a pretty simple install. I'm going to finish by torquing everything up, but I don't think you guys need to see that, especially when we don't have any proper lights. But thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more Mk5 content. This car's got a little ways to go before it's class competitive on a more national scope. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you want to see more videos. I tended to be doing a lot of Mk5 stuff because this car is in build right now. But I also have a good number of your early 2000s Chevys, which tend to take a little bit of their own love and care. And we'll be getting back to those shortly. They got some maintenance going, or maintenance due. But thank you guys for watching. Subscribe. This is Chris from Almost Legit Garage. See you guys later.